All right, it's 1 o'clock. We'll get started here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Suresh Srinivasan. I'm the coordinator for the Minnesota Astronomical Society's Special Interest Group, also known as the BSIG. Today, we've got a presentation by Ron Schmit, who's a longtime MAS member and one of the best speakers I know of astronomy. Ron runs the astronomy program at the Jackson Middle School in Champlin. He's also in charge of the programs at the Eisenhower Observatory. Is it the Eisenhower Observatory? The Eisenhower Community Center Observatory in Hopkins, and a few other things. I've known Ron for at least 10 years now, and hope you enjoy his presentation here on Stellarium as much as I will. Ron, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Suresh. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll apologize to stick you inside on a beautiful summer, actually a beautiful autumn day, but it's not that beautiful out. So I hope
Pretty
this will be
hideous.
time well spent, and we'll be able to spend some time here on Stellarium and get you familiar with the software. I hope to, by the time we're done, I hope to get you, basically proficient with it, that you could open it up and move it around and look around and use some of the basics that it provides you, because it certainly is a powerful application. Now, there's no shortage of them. There's all sorts of software out there. Just a few of the titles there on the left. You can go to your app store, be it Android or Apple or PC or what have you, and there's all sorts of titles out there. But oftentimes they are sort of not everything to everybody, and sometimes they try to be everything to everybody. So they can either be limited in what you're doing, or they can be ridiculously complicated, and either way can present some challenges. So I wanted to show you Stellarium because it's sort of my route around that for getting people access to a computer software package that is very useful, great for observing the night sky and doing stargazing. Now, these could kind of wrap up into different priorities, different topics, different focuses. Some of these software packages are sort of universe engines where you are not bound to the Earth, you're floating in space, and you can head off to wherever you want, distant galaxies, nebula, fly through the Seven Sisters, go around the Orion Nebula, things like that. You'll see this in planetarium software, like at the Hayden Museum in New York, or at the Bell Museum, even here in St. Paul, over on the St. Paul campus. So you're driving around the universe, and I've even gotten to run the UniView software that Bell used to use, but it's not backyard stargazing. That software package was horrible for just standing on Earth and looking up and seeing what you can see. Some of these applications are physics sandbox, where you can mess with the laws of physics or play with the laws of physics and set up all sorts of movement through space, mess with gravity and mass and momentum. Some are astronomy tutors, will take you a step at a time through all things astronomical, describing planets and stars and asteroids and comets and nebula and clusters. Some are straight up star charts, nothing more than cartography for the sky. And depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, sometimes that's a great way to go, because you can zoom right in on what you're trying to find. There are some out there that are really just pretty pictures. Hubble's got a website where you can go and enter your birthday, and it will tell you what the Hubble was looking at on your birthday. And Hubble always provides the best pictures. And now we got the James Webb doing the same thing. Some of these focus on telescope operation. I think of the sky that we have out at Baylor by software BISC. That connects to our telescopes and helps them operate. And we can move the telescope by simply moving around through the map. Many of them nowadays are focused on astrophotography, how to get that perfect shot, including, if you've followed any of Mike Shaw's stuff, how to set up, where to set up, and what angle you need to take to the object that you're hoping to see, like watching that moonrise right between the buildings in Minneapolis. He's taken some incredible shots. And so you have some ephemera software that can line you up at the right spot so it all comes together for that perfect photograph.
Sorry,
And
Ron,
some of them are limited to certain operations. Is there a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Lee Merriman. I just wanted to ask you, I'm kind of interested in astrophotography. Is there a package you can recommend for that?
Not me. I don't do any of that.
Okay, thank you.
Lee,
I
I'll
keep
I'll
I
chat
keep
with you
my money.
offline. Hey, let me
I'm
this is a good segue. Let me just jump in real quick. If you have a question for Ron, please drop it in the chat. Just click on the chat on the bottom. And when Ron pauses, I'll go ahead and mention your question. That way it keeps the flow going. And the second thing is if you're looking to download Stellarium and you can't find it, go to stellarium.org and all the different versions are up at the very top of the screen for you to download. Back to you, Ron.
Yep. That's coming up in a slide or two if you want to take a look at what that looks like. So some of these software packages have very limited operations. They're for a very specific function, and those are great, but it might not be what you're looking for. So what I wanted to talk about was Stellarium because it's got some real big benefits. It's free, it's intuitive, I think it's easy to use, it's flexible, it's expandable. There's some stuff tucked in behind some screens and some buttons that you can really go to town with. It's also open source, so there's a community out there that writes stuff to insert into the software, and maybe there's a function you're looking for that someone's working on out there. And it really does the backyard stargazing that I can't find in a lot of other applications. It's like you're standing there in your yard and you've got 360 degrees of sky all around you. You've got eyesight that can actually zoom in like a telescope, and you can move through time like a time lord, forward, backward, what have you. And you can even move around on the earth and put yourself in places where you hope to be soon, or maybe someplace that you might never get to. So that's the goal of our presentation today, to talk about a software application that can recreate for you the joy of stargazing from your backyard and observing the night sky. So if you go out to stellarium.org, there's the URL right there. You can see the various versions at the top there. They have versions for Linux, one for Mac OS, 3 for Windows, and they also have a web component. The web component is a recent addition, and you don't have to go out and really load anything up other than go out there in your internet browser, and it will give you a version of Stellarium that is relatively comprehensive. It's missing a lot of the big functions, but it does take care of the simple stuff. Stellarium is driven a lot by the buttons, and don't worry, we're going to talk about navigating through these buttons. But you can also see an ad on the side here for the mobile apps, both from the App Store and the Google Play Store. Now, I did mention that Stellarium is free for download to all of these platforms. If you want it on the mobile device, then it costs a couple dollars. Sometimes they charge you right up front, or sometimes there's in-app purchases for additional complexity if you want to add that later on as you go. Also, while you're out there, if you do want to dig in, there is a user guide out there in PDF form. It's out at the stellarium.org site. Look for files and the PDF guide, and you can download that. And a lot of what we're going to cover today is nestled inside there. I'm going to try to, like a good sauce, put that on the burner for a while and cook that down so we've got just a nice essence rather than going through the whole volume of all that information. So let's start with step one. Where are you? And how are you going to find out where you can put yourself inside the software? So I'm a Google guy, so I'm going to go out to Google Maps here, and we are going to go find, if we want to find out where we are on the Earth, we can head out to Google Maps, and that will allow us to get a look at the coordinates of what we want to find. So I'm just going to head out to Baylor Regional Park. Oh, wrong way. There it is. Out to the Eagle Lake Observatory on the shores of Eagle Lake. Of course, you can certainly search through the search window there, but not far from there, there's our observatory. And I'm going to drop a pin right there. Now, when that pin pops up, you might not notice it, but if you right mouse on that pin, it's going to give you the coordinates right there. So there's your longitude and latitude. Now, this is in decimal form. So what you'll want to do is you want to copy that down. And if you simply click on that, notice at the bottom there, it says copied to clipboard. So now I've got those coordinates and I can go in to Stellarium. And one of the first steps is to download your position on planet Earth. So let me go back to our interface. And on the left, you'll click on the location window, and that will pop up and allow you to enter your coordinates. Now, up at the top, if you don't happen to have your coordinates, there are two things you can do. First off, you can look through the database right here. You can scroll through, or you can simply tap in the search window right here and start typing your location. Minneapolis is listed, St. Paul's listed, some of the other cities in our metro area are listed, and they could pop up, and then you've got your location, and it's already programmed in there. And that makes it really easy. You can also click on the map. If you're going somewhere, someone else in the world, you can go down and click on, if you want to go visit Australia, or maybe you have plans to visit South America, maybe South Central Africa, you just click that and it instantly fills in the position and your time zone and gives you your location where you want to look. So either finding it in the database or clicking it on the map. Since we want to observe for Baylor, we went out and grabbed the coordinates, longitude and latitude. Google Maps doesn't do so well with elevation. There are other sources for elevation, but 250 meters is pretty standard for around Minnesota. Minnesota's at about 1,200 feet above sea level. So here in this box, you can go ahead and enter that longitude and latitude information. And you can also enter the elevation. Now notice it came in decimal form from Google. All you have to do is double click inside this box, paste the decimal form, and when you hit the enter key, it will automatically switch to degrees, minutes, and seconds. If your computer is on a network that provides GPS information or provides a location services, you can also use that here, getting location from GPS or getting location from your network. Not all networks have that. Depends upon what your company provides for you or your internet service provider will provide for you. And of course, you can enable daylight saving time in case you're on that part of the world where we still follow it. All right, so once you enable daylight saving time, you can actually add to this list up here. Now, this will be local only. This is on board your application on your PC. So when you add your location here, you can list the name of the location. That can be the city or a nickname like your cabin. You can list Schmit Cabin or Baylor Park or Creek Meadow. There you go. You can put that in there. And you can add your time zone. And you can click add to the list and it will add that. You can also remove it from the list if you need to. And one other thing, I want you to notice that when it asks for country and planet, yes, there are other planets to choose from. So you can set up on Titan, and that would be the view in your night sky. How amazing would that be? There's Saturn. So there are a variety of places already encoded into Stellarium where you can go out and observe from the planets, from moons, different places throughout our solar system. All right, so that's the location window. Let's take a stop there and see if there's any questions regarding location.
Ron, Kevin asked about on Stellarium Mobile. Let's see if we can find this question here. He wants to know how to set the location because he has trouble pointing to an object using Stellarium.
He
I
has
tried
trouble
to answer
pointing
that.
to an object.
Well,
Well,
if he says
with his
that if he,
telescope, or
with his phone, if he points with his phone in the sky, the object is not there.
It's off a ways. So I made sure that the location was correct. I used the compass on my phone to find out the longitude, latitude, and maybe that's not good enough. I don't know, but
well, I
point to the
know.
sky and the object is kind of off ways.
Sure. Now, a compass on a phone isn't something I tend to rely on because they're typically off, not just with magnetic variation, but also with the metal in your phone does have an effect. About the best you can do is calibrate it right before you use it. And typically that's holding it flat and walking around in a circle as it measures the variation in the magnetic field. But even just, walking around in a circle, that's not a huge variation for it to triangulate onto the geomagnetic pole. So mobile wise, I'm not sure how to help you with the accuracy of your phone.
I think I'll use the method that you just showed us on the map and locating
There
the
you go.
place. That'd be good. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions. Does anybody have any other questions? Lee, I did answer your question about astrophotography apps in the chat, so you can take a look at that. And if you have any other questions, you can reach back out.
All right, so now we need to set the time and the date. So that's that little button there on the left. You can see that will pop up this window. We have the year and the month and the day, and then the time with a 24-hour clock. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the shortcuts, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You can see that it's mentioning there's a shortcut for you. If you want to click F5, it'll get you there as well. And I've sat through software training before where they give you all the shortcuts and the hotkeys and the fast blast and the tricks around the back walls and the back door entrances to here's a way to route around that. And it doesn't help you if you're trying to learn how to do the software. So we're going to stick specifically to the buttons that you see on the screen. If you want to learn the shortcuts later, you can. In fact, there's a helpful little hint right there. If you're all about, hotkeys, you can go ahead and do it. But we're going to stick to just one type of entering data and making your selections, and that's going to be the on-screen control panels. Now, if you're unfamiliar, that date and time, you can see that that's our standard format. On the right, there's the Julian day. And there's a Julian day and the modified Julian date. If you do computer programming, you may know about a Julian date. It's a number of days counted from January 1st, 4713 BC on the Julian calendar. And they stick to the Julian calendar because the Gregorian calendar has changed since the Julian calendar. They got rid of 15 days and they count time differently. It works really well if you're trying to do date and time math. So if you're trying to do math, figure out the difference, the length of time between two dates, between 2 days, that's where the Julian comes into, that's when the Julian is handy, and also the modified Julian date is November 17th, 1858. And again, it's just if you're doing time math. So you can just stick with the standard date and time, that'll work fine for you. Then over there, along with some of the other commands, like I said, there's multiple options. There's function keys, there's shortcuts, there's menus you can dig down into, and there's even plugins that you can add to Stellarium that will automatically change settings for you. And that's a little beyond the scope of what we're doing today. Again, I'm trying to get you to just use this for backyard observing and stargazing. But as you get more proficient at it, as you get more comfortable with it, there's all sorts of new ways of operating it, shortcuts and time savings and customization that you can add as you go. And we will talk just a very little bit about that, but I'll encourage you to, do some exploration on your own. As you activate these windows, they will highlight, as you see there. So if the time is highlighted, it's on the screen somewhere. And those windows you can normally move around and put them wherever you want to, stack them up so they're convenient and you can read them easily. All right, so let's head out to the Stellarium environment. And before we do, just the basic commands, all we need: a left click on a mouse selects an object, a right click with your mouse clears that selection. So if you click on Jupiter and Jupiter is now selected, you can right click on Jupiter and that will deselect Jupiter. You can click and drag to pan the sky in both pitch and yaw. And the roll axis in this case is by default controlled by the zenith. So as we go out there, I'll show you, as you try to go overhead, overhead starts to spin around. So it's almost like you're standing there. You can look towards the horizon, you can look up and up and up, and pretty soon you're straight overhead and you can't keep bending over. So now you have to turn around to follow down to the other horizon. And if that confuses you, give me a second, we'll get there. And then finally, the scroll button on your mouse will zoom you in and out. And there's not a on-screen control for that. So there are some mouse functions that you are going to need. So let's head on out to Stellarium and let's drive around a little bit. So here we are at 8 o'clock tonight. By default, the cardinal locations are up. So you can see where we're looking: north, south, east, and west. And off to the east at 8 o'clock, Jupiter is just starting to come up. And again, a left click on that will highlight Jupiter. And we can scroll to get a closer look at Jupiter. Now notice as I scroll in, if I don't have it directly in the center, it's going to wander off to the side. Now, if you have a scroll wheel, you can take care of that by clicking the center scroll wheel, and it will go to the center. Let me do that again. I right mouse, and that deselects Jupiter. Now it's no longer what I'm focusing on. But if I'm looking at the sky and I see, oh, there's the Pleiades up at the top left, and I can click on the Pleiades to highlight them. Clicking my scroll wheel, it will then put them in the center. So there are a couple mouse operations that once you have the basics, you'll be able to explore a little bit easier. One more time, let me hit Jupiter. And when I push the button, it puts Jupiter in the center. Now, those pink lines are just indicating that that's what we're highlighting. And notice when I zoom in from this angle, it stays dead center. And I don't have to worry about wandering off the screen. And yes, you really do end up getting to see the planets. That's some pretty good detail. Now, this is not current detail. This has been programmed into the application a while ago. So you're not going to be able to look to see updates to the red spot. It will show you where the red spot is at this time. So you can see at 8 o'clock, you will be able to see the red spot on Jupiter. But this is not how the red spot currently looks. It's been shrinking recently. It's gotten a little more of a dark red to it. And there are a couple spots along that equatorial band that have been added in the last year that are moving across and sliding along the clouds. Notice as you back up, you can also see some of Jupiter's moons, the 4 Galilean moons. We are missing Io, but as you can see when I zoom in, Io is right behind Jupiter. All right, so as far as moving around through the night sky, you've got some default values that are there that can help you at least start to explore. You'll start to learn where things are in the sky in relation to each other and in relation to your horizon. I have that on. Oh, sorry about that.
Hey, Ron, Mary
I'll get
Helen
back to that
Inskeep
function in a little bit. Yeah.
Mary Ellen Inskeep is asking, she noticed that the timestamp on the bottom edge is 2000 hours UTC and not 2000 CST. She's asking about that. I think on the bottom right there, where it says,
Yep,
I think it's under Julian Day.
Yep, I see it. We are on current location. We are on our standard central time zone. UTC -6. That's just in reference to our local time is UTC -6. So that timestamp down there at the bottom, that's our local time.
She's good.
And our local time is UTC -6. All right, one other thing you'll notice is let's go to the top left of the screen. When I click on an object, you will see a variety of information displayed here. Now, there is a default setting for that, and that may look like way too much for you to pick through all of that and figure out what's going on. That's fine. If it becomes a nuisance, there are actually settings in Stellarium where you can go and reduce the amount of information there. I mean, they have alt as, they've got right ascension and declination, so the coordinates in the sky. They'll have magnitude at the top, letting you know how bright it is, which is helpful for stars. And things like distance. And for the moon, it'll give you the current phase. So if there's questions about, is that a quarter or how much of the moon is illuminated, all that information is there. And that will change with whatever object you're looking at. If it's a solar system object or a star, there's Altair. Up at the top, you may be surprised, it'll give you a long list of the different names and the different catalogs that the object is referenced in. Its nickname, its Bayer designation, the SAO catalog, the Hipparchus catalog. So much information available if you want to avail yourself of that. So left mouse dragging moves us around the sky. And then let me go right overhead and show you what happens if you try to go all the way overhead. It flips you around because it doesn't want you to fall over, dummy. So you're stuck there on the zenith. And again, this is a default value. If you want to change this around, there are all sorts of options available. But I like to stick with this because it gives me an idea of I'm standing out in the backyard and I'm just looking around. And that's the way I would look around when I'm standing out in my backyard. All right, let me head back to my slideshow. So that's the very basic functions: left mouse, right mouse, drag, roll, and scroll. Any questions about the very basic operation?
Laura's asking, does the paid mobile version have all this functionality? The free version is pretty bare bones.
Well, let's differentiate between mobile version and free version. So the mobile version, you can download it and it is bare bones. If you want to purchase some in-app purchases, you can improve the functionality to it. Same with the mobile version. The PC version, Linux and Mac, are all free. So there's a difference between the desktop version, which is free, and the mobile version, which is free. So we're kind of sticking to the downloadable free version that you can have on your PC. And that has all the functionality that, well, I think it's all the functionality you need. I mean, it's ridiculously functional. We are going to just scratch the surface of all that it can do. And that's all included in the package that you download, and that's free. All right, let's take a look at the screen, because there are two areas for the control panels. There's the horizontal control panel and the vertical control panel along the side. The one along the side is a gateway to other windows that have increased functionality, where the control panel on the bottom is really right for that screen that you're looking at and changes the settings on your screen to provide more information. So again, if you want to make some changes to Stellarium, you can do that through the icons on the control panel. You can do that through some shortcuts. You can do that through menus, and you can do it through plugins. But to avoid the chaos of showing you the same function 5 different ways, again, I'm going to stick with the buttons. Now, when a button is active, it'll be highlighted like you see here. It will appear on the screen. And then if I click on it, it will highlight like this. And that will tell you which of the functions are active at the time. So let's go across the top here, talk about what this data is and what these buttons are and what they do for us. So we start with this thin header to the control panel. It's telling us on the left our location, Earth, thank you, our longitude and latitude, the geographic coordinates that we've entered in. The middle value is field of view, and that tells us how wide of an angle the sky displays. So when you saw us go out to the Stellarium environment, you know, we're out at about 85 degrees. If you zoom in, that field of view gets smaller. If you zoom out, the field of view gets wider, and that gives you an idea of how big it is. Sometimes you can have a field of view that's way too big, and it doesn't match very well with the sky, and sometimes it's way too close. So finding a good medium that matches sort of the 50 millimeters of your eyeballs is a good way to go about it, at least to start. And then you can zoom to your heart's content. On the right is the frame rate. That will tell you how fast the frames are refreshing. And then on the right side is the date and time information. Our date stamp, the local time, and the time zone that we're at may be included parenthetically here. This one does have universal time displayed. So in that previous display, it simply told us that our time is UTC -6, but you can actually have that listed here as well with the time zone. And now the buttons, we're going to go through them kind of a chunk at a time here. And then as we make changes to them, you can look up onto the screen above and we'll highlight what they do. First, we're going to start with the constellation lines. If you click that, you'll see that the stars are joined by these dot-to-dot lines that we have, the constellations. Now, back in 1920, the International Astronomical Union broke up the sky into 88 different constellations. They are mythological creatures, inanimate objects, animals, a variety of different themes in the constellations. And the official list of constellations, the Western constellations we have, are mostly based on Greek and Roman traditions. So Roman mythology, Greek origins, things like that we'll see. We'll talk more about constellations a little bit here, but that gives you your basic layout of the constellations in the sky. Next up are the names. You click on that button and the names for the constellations will be listed. Again, this is the official name of the constellation. You can see Ursa Major here, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why didn't they label the Big Dipper? The Big Dipper is actually an asterism, something that looks like something. So it's a shape that you recognize in the sky. That's different from the constellation. Constellation is an area of the sky. Astronomers don't care if this bear is facing this way or if the bear is facing that way or if this is actually Barney the dinosaur. What they care about is the border around these constellations. If a star lies within that border, then it's part of that constellation. Even if it's not part of the drawing of the bear, it's still included in that constellation. You can kind of think of it like cities. If a city sits within the border of a state, even if it's not one of the more popular choices like Warroad or Winona or Moorhead, it's still part of that state. And it's the same with stars. Click again and we get the constellation artwork. These were loaded up, and again, these are all matching the Greek and Roman traditions. Auriga, originally the charioteer, now more of a goat herder. They do what they can as the stories of the constellations change. and the themes change. And that artwork has been added, and there is alternative artwork. We'll see an option for that a little later. This button represents the polar grid. You click on that and notice the North Pole right there at the very top, at the end of the tail of the little bear, the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, that's our North Star, that's Polaris. And our coordinate system of right ascension and declination is all based on geographic north and geographic south. And that's a little different than altitude and azimuth grid. So this one, these lines are parallel to the horizon, and these are vertical to the horizon or perpendicular to the horizon. And they all meet up at a point directly overhead, which we call the zenith. So when you're out in your backyard looking at Venus above the tree line, you can get an idea of how many degrees above the horizon it is using this grid, and that can help you out. It's 10-degree gradients here, but as you get closer, it will add additional lines for more accuracy. So if you're trying to figure out if Jupiter there is 16 degrees or 17, just start to zoom in and it will get clearer and clearer, and it will give you a better reading on what that altitude and azimuth is. The polar grid is much more useful if you're using an equatorial mount on your telescope. An equatorial mount is a must-have if you're doing astrophotography. I find it very convenient because it follows the objects across the sky as the Earth rotates without having to adjust the second axis. You can keep it on one axis, and simply a slow-mo control can follow along, or a motor drive on that axis can follow along using your polar grid. The next set is for the area around you and some of the sky settings. So the first one is landscape. Notice on the right, checking the landscape button, you can see that the ground is visible. There's some trees, there's buildings, there's a horizon back there. Now, these horizons, the images for the horizons are preloaded into Stellarium. People have added some in the past. I find having some trees out there gives me a much more natural look to it, but then sometimes the tree's in the way. So you can make the horizon go away, or you can pick a horizon like one of my favorites is ocean, because you can see where the horizon starts. You can't look below the star. You can't look below the horizon. So you could get the horizon effects, but you don't have any trees in the way. So it's flat all the way around 360 degrees. And there is a function to load your own backyard. If you want to take a panorama picture and load that up, you're free to do that. On the left side, you can see what happens if you click the landscape button off. The ground disappears. And that works great if you're trying to find out how far the sun is below the horizon, and if astronomical dark has arrived yet, or how close you are to having Jupiter come up above the horizon. You can click and make the horizon disappear, and that will give you a reference to the rest of what's going on in the sky. This just gives you the cardinal directions. And again, as you get closer and zoom in more, it will give you more variations in that detail. But simple west, northwest, south, southwest, to help you line up and orient yourself to the sky. And the atmosphere is quite a neat function. There is a modicum of light pollution dialed in to Stellarium, so you don't get a unrealistic view of what the sky looks like. I know lots of software will do that. You'll be looking at something that looks like you're looking at the portal of your spacecraft. So many stars, you can't actually see the constellations that are in front of you. This gives you a much more realistic look at the stars that you're going to be able to see. On the left is what happens if you shut the atmosphere off. Now, that can be useful because if you're looking for something that maybe you can't see from your backyard, you can get rid of the glow of the sky and really zoom in on something. You can see how well the Milky Way shows up if you shut that off. Yeah, I know that's cheating. But you can be aspirational. Here you are on the the big Karoo in southern Africa, and it's dry as a bone for miles and miles, and not a light to be seen, and it looks just like that. Clicking this button will allow deep sky objects to show up. There are globular clusters, nebula, open clusters. Each one will have a different icon, a square, a circle with a plus sign in it. So each of these, notice on the right, we have none of those selected. You push that button and all these start to show up on the left. Now, I'm not a huge fan. I think I talked with Suresh about this a few years back. I was trying to get rid of some of the silly nicknames they put on these things.
Yeah.
Or when they label something, I would just as soon know that, this was M22. I don't need to know that this is the Great Sagittarius Cluster, or whatever. So I've tried to get rid of the nicknames from time to time, but that's just something they add to that charm. And they hope that people use them. What's M11? The
Wild duck.
wild duck. Yep, there's another one. It's like the shoemaker's cluster or something. I've never heard of it. I think it was M35
Coat hanger?
had that one. No, not the
Oh,
coating.
okay.
It was like an open cluster, and instead of just calling it M35, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I know those much better. It had some silly nickname to it, and I'm like, whatever. And by the way, the wild duck looks nothing like a wild duck. Okay, at me offline. Tell me I'm wrong. I just don't see it. All right, so those show up, and of course we can zoom in on them and get a much better look at them. And then finally, the planets. You click that button and they can show up for you. Now, when you display the planets, if you are going to use these pictures of the stars, pictures of the constellations for year after year after year, do remember that Venus won't be here in a month. The moon won't be here tomorrow. And Saturn and Jupiter aren't going to be that close together. So as soon as you see the position of the planets, your timestamp is there, So it's sometimes convenient to get rid of the planets and look at the sky more from a stellar point of view. Just the stars and not the planets as well. Yeah.
Hey, Ron, to turn off those nicknames that you don't like, it's under labels and markers. It's the first one. Use designations for screen labels. If you uncheck that, that'll revert back to the NGC or other number.
Yeah, it's not comprehensive.
No.
It's still you have to kind of go around and there's like different layers of what you can disable. Right. And so it's not fully customizable.
Right.
I can work with it. All right, so with those functions, let's head back out to our Stellarium environment and let's take a look at how those work. Now notice the menu pops out when you roll down there. If you've got a full-size screen, it should sit right down there showing you where it's at. Sometimes if you are not at full screen, this can be off the bottom and you might not see it. So I'll show you the function to make that full screen a little later on here. So let's go back to, here we are, cruising through the sky. We've already got the lines up. Here's the names and the characters, the artwork. And then as we head around to the north, we can see our North Star there. And that gets us right to the North Pole. By the way, let me make our ground disappear. Let me hop ahead a function here. And no, Virginia, there is no South Pole. Now, no South Pole star. It's a little frustrating, but there you go. You can see where the Southern Pole is, and there's nothing there to help you. Well, there is something there to help you, but it's not a pole star. Using Alpha and Beta Centauri, drawing a line between them, and then following the line from Crux, where those two cross is where the South Pole is. But while you're trying to figure that out, then you have to reconcile that it's spinning backwards. Southern Hemisphere is an amazing place. All right, let's put our land back in there. There's our polar grid. And then let me show you our azimuth grid. And you can see how they offset each other. The polar grid will always stay right over the North Pole. The azimuth grid will move to the zenith wherever you're located. So that is directly overhead. So if you are having trouble trying to figure out what constellation you're looking at, figuring out where your zenith is, and then the 90 degrees from your zenith to the horizon will help you out. And as you can see, the North Star at our latitude, 10, 20, 30, 45 degrees up. The altitude of the North Star in the Northern Hemisphere is always your latitude. One of the most useful parts of astronomy. You saw me make the ground disappear. There's the sun fully below the horizon at 8 o'clock. I can also make the cardinal points disappear if I want a nice clean horizon. And then finally making the atmosphere disappear. And now we're suddenly out in space with all the clarity provided by the vacuum of outer space. And a lot more stars compared to our light polluted atmosphere. That's actually a pretty good sky. I wouldn't be able to lay down a bordel for you, but if you can see some of the stars of the Little Dipper, you're doing pretty well. Usually where I'm at, these are gone. All right, let's head back to our slideshow. There we are. All right, to the right, now we have some other controls, a little bit more esoteric, not so much related to observing in the night sky, but more controlling the software to provide you some different options. So first off, we have right here, you can switch between equatorial and azimuth control. And what that means is on the left, as you see, the horizon is always flat. So as you look up, the horizon stays flat in front of you. As you turn, the horizon stays flat. It's like as if you're standing there and turning right to left. So the horizon is always flat and parallel. But if you switch to an equatorial mode, as you turn to the right, you actually turn with the pole. So the land will tip with you. So it kind of gives you the view of if your telescope is on an equatorial mount, this is how when you move that axis, if you spin on the polar axis, it moves this way. This gets me out of the realm of backyard stargazing, so I typically don't use this function. This one I use all the time, though. As you saw, if we want to highlight an object, you can see in the center of the screen here. If I want the moon to be in the middle, I'll click on the moon and then click this button, and that will center the object in my field of view. And it will provide those little pink lines along the side that will spin slowly around to indicate that that is what I have highlighted on my screen. This works very helpful if a planet that you're looking for, an object you're looking for is below the horizon, because you enter that object in the search window, you push center it, and it will push it right to the middle of the screen. And if you're looking at grass, you know it's not up yet. Next is night vision. As you can see on the right-hand side, if you click that button, it will run all of the white colors red and give you a relative night-friendly red image, so you're not blowing out your night vision. I know if you've run a laptop before, many laptops are backlit, and that light leaks through, and it's not really helping your night vision. And sometimes, especially on some of the operating systems you have to actually go in to like your Windows operating system. I've had to do this and switch my menu headers and your frames and your background and everything like that. So Stellarium does a good job of it. It might not be completely comprehensive for the computer that you're on, but that can get you close.
Hey,
So
Ron.
that is helpful. Yes, sir.
Mary Helen asked another question. How do we change to the alternate artwork?
Yeah,
I think she
we'll
means on
talk
the
about that in a
console.
little bit. Yeah, there's another button there we'll get to.
Okay.
This button will take you to full screen, and that will be edge to edge. Now, Stellarium does something interesting is they're a little bit, I think selfish would be too strong, but once you go to full screen, that's it. You don't have any, oh, I'll just tap over to another window. In fact, if you take a screenshot by default, you won't be able to paste it into Paint or your PowerPoint slides or your email. It will end up in a different folder. And I'm not sure why they do that. I think it might just be for continuity so that it's the same for everyone's system, which is kind of the different option to go. But there you go. So full screen's nice because it takes care of any edge effects from other software, your operating system or what have you. Gives you a nice full view. And then the flip buttons. So if you are looking at the moon in the sky, there's Mare Crisium. If you're looking through your telescope like a reflector, it's flipped over, and that will match the view you see through your telescope. So horizontal flip, vertical flip, both of those are available there to flip the image in case you happen to be looking through a optical device. All right, so taking us back to our Stellarium environment. We'll let those pop up from the bottom. There you can see the equatorial move. And that's why I leave it in this mode, because it's just me turning around.
Ron, Laura's asking, she doesn't have flip buttons. Is there maybe a different version?
That's something you can add. That's a customizable addition. There's a moon. I hit the button and it zooms it into the center. I switch to night mode, and there you can see the entire screen, edge to edge. No white. Where there was white, now there's red. It does, we'll take a look at zooming in on objects and what they look like. If I want to see M57, for example, in Lyra. There it is. Zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. Lovely. And if I'm in night mode, oh, that's not as super cool. So there is a compromise there, but I'll take my night vision any day. And it's not going to look like that when I look with my eye anyway. It's going to be all gray. And there's that toggle for the full screen. So when you off a full screen, that menu bar comes in, and there, that one right there is the menu bar that's not going to go away if you switch to red light mode or night vision mode. All right, the next set of functions on the right side there. These are also plugins. They are, we'll talk a little bit about plugins a little later on, but I have found these functions really helpful in some of the stuff I've done, and so I'll just touch on them quickly. If you want to find the angular separation between objects, this can do that. Once you do that, and I'll show you in a moment, you're kind of stuck in that mode until you shut it off. But if you're trying to figure out how far apart things are, it's very helpful. This is for exoplanets. This will display exoplanets as a dot on the screen, much like you saw with the deep sky objects. This is for meteor showers. It will show you the radiant of the meteor showers. And if you're looking for, let's say you're looking at your calendar, looking ahead in your calendar to find out when the next meteor showers are going to be, you can actually search the meteor showers using your calendar. You can set the calendar for a year and then find out when the next meteor showers are over the next year. And then a button to help show satellites. So you may have some software that shows you when satellites are coming by. Stellarium can actually function in that capacity as well and show you where satellites are located. So quickly back to the Stellarium environment. If I want to find out how far it is between Vega and Aquila, I simply drag that and it tells me in degrees, minutes, and seconds. Now notice, once I'm in that mode, I'm stuck. I can't drag. So I have to go back, toggle that off. And then once I activate it again, dragging will give me the angular separation. The exoplanets, I think the Kepler window, oh, I hit the button and now it's trying to calculate the Kepler window. That's going to take a minute. We'll skip past that. I do want to show you the meteor showers though, because it will tell you the radiant. Now, if you've watched meteor showers before, you know that the radiant is not the be all and the end all of observing a meteor shower. You really just need to go outside and look up. If you just try to stare right there at the radiant for the northern torids or for the southern torids, you're going to miss the things that are going off over your head. So it is helpful to find out when the radiant is above the horizon, how far north it is, things of that nature, but don't get too obsessed with the radiance. I know the news makes a big deal out of it. Like you have to find the constellation of Taurus and stare at it, otherwise you won't see anything. I prefer to calm down a little bit. All right, now, those are optional functions that you might have on your dashboard, but these are the important ones here for time. There we go. So here we have the play pause button. You can, by default, it will be operating at sidereal rate. It'll show a little play icon. You hit the button and it will pause and stop the time. You push it again and it will start the clock over. Oh, I'm sorry, it'll start the clock again. If you push the little hourglass, it gives you the current time and date. So if you were looking at, hey, what's the sky going to look like in a couple weeks? And then you're done with that assignment. Now you want to run back to what it's going to look like tonight. Boom, you click that button and you're back there looking at the current date and time. There's the fast forward button. Clicking that once, the change in speed barely perceptible. Push it again. Now it's a little faster. Push it again. Now it's starting to move. Sky spins. You can easily see it move. Push it again. It goes faster. You can push it up to 5 times, and each time it goes faster. I never was able to figure out the scale of that, but you keep pushing it and it can go pretty quickly. You can also back it up in violation of all of physics and everything we hold dear, but I get it. It helps. And then there's the power button. If you want to shut off the app, you just click that and the app disappears. Remember, when you open it back up, it goes back to whatever you've programmed. Now, that's not necessarily the default. When you install it, the settings that come up are default settings. But in our next section here, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes you can make. And when you make those changes, as you can see with my buttons here, those will load up at startup and give you your customized options. All right, let's go back to our environment, drive around for a second, show you those new functions as available, and then we're going to take a little break. So let's head off to the east so we can see the passage of time. I click once and you can barely tell anything's happened. I click again, still not much of a rate change. You can see the clock running faster. I click again, and now you can see it creep. I click again, and now there's no doubt. There, the sky's moving quickly, kind of like a time lapse. I click again, oh, and now it's getting ridiculous. Oh, hit the pause button. And now I've zoomed all the way up to 230. And you can see as when I push the play button again, it goes back to its regular sidereal rate. And if I want to freeze that right at 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 38 seconds, I push that button and now it's paused. I want to back up to where I was. I push reverse. I push it again. I can see time backing up faster, even faster, really super fast. And now I'm back to my 8 o'clock. And finally, the right now button, boom, puts me to right now. Here, where I'm at, my coordinates, and this is what the sky looks like right now. As silly as it is putting constellations up. But if you do want to find out what's up in the sky next to the sun right now, make that daytime disappear, and there we go. You can figure out what's up in the daytime sky. All right, Suresh, let's take a little bit of a break there. Let you guys get up, get a fresh cup of coffee, and we'll get started again in 5 minutes.
Sounds good. Kevin, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I've actually used Stellarium to connect from my PC to my telescope to use that as the planetarium software. There's another piece of software called Stellarium Connect that you have to get to actually have it drive the mount on telescope. But yes, Stellarium can be used for that purpose.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's been a few years since I've used it for that purpose, and it wasn't always the best. Wasn't always the most didn't stay connected very well, especially when it got cold, but it definitely worked.
Okay, there must be another software that most people use then to guide their telescope.
So I would say for people that are using their laptops or tablets, a lot of people use Nina. And then people that are using wireless devices are either using ZW Airs or Stellarmate, or there's probably one or two more, but those are probably the main ones.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, if you're gonna use a software to drive a mount off a laptop, I would use Nina. That's the newer one. It's very, very versatile and fairly easy to use.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Sure. Yeah, if you got any other questions about that, hit me up offline.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right, before we spin up again, does anyone have any questions? You can drop them in the chat, or since we have a pause here, if you just want to unmute, let me know if you have a question I can help you with.
Sure. Just doing a time check for you, Ron. We got about 23 minutes. Does that work for you?
23 minutes, what?
Usually we keep these to 90 minutes plus Q&A.
Oh, okay.
Unless you,
90
I mean,
minutes,
do we need to go long?
90 minutes includes the Q&A?
No, it does not. Do you need
Ah,
to go longer? If you need to go longer, we can go longer.
nope. No, I do not. All right, let's jump back in. All right, welcome back from break. We are now going to get started with the control panel on the left side. This is the vertical control panel. Now, we've already seen part of it with the location window. Got a good review of how that works and the time and date function. And remember, on the left side, instead of having functions that change in the Stellarium environment, these open windows through which you can make changes. And one of those includes the sky and viewing options. So once we open up that window, you can see there are more tabs at the top. And let's take a little look at what some of those tabs provide for us. So this first one is just general sky settings. This will help you adjust the sky to make it look more like it looks like where you're viewing from. You can change the light pollution is a function that's very helpful. So you get a better, more realistic view of what your sky looks like. You can change what gets displayed in the sky. If you want to make things more complicated, less complicated, those options are there for you. The solar system objects changes objects in the solar system. The planets, sun, the moon, asteroids. You can change what level you can see down to, what magnitude level you can see down to, and you can change the labels and how they're displayed. If you just want the planets to appear as an icon, you can do that. But as you saw, it switches to something that's more photorealistic as we zoom in. Same with the deep sky objects. You can, as we talked earlier, you can adjust how it labels them. You can change the magnitude of what appears. If all you want are the deep sky objects that you can see with your eyes, for example, you can adjust it to that. Stretch it a little farther out for binocular objects. And then if you got a telescope, you can go crazy and push it way out, depending on the size of your telescope. The markings in the sky are many and varied. There are all sorts of additional lines you can add, things such as the borders for the constellations, the local meridian, so you can see transits, the ecliptic in the sky, the path that the planets and the sun take through our sky. Those are just a few of the reference lines that you can change by going into the markings tab. The landscape allows you to change the area around you. You saw the trees and buildings that I have as a default for mine. This is also where I can change to the ocean. And really helpful is you can upload your own custom landscape. Now, that's not just a vanity plate, right? But if you've ever been out to Eagle Lake, you know that the telescopes in the Onan are partially blocked by the roof. And so stuff coming out of the northeast has to, move its way up above the roof line before you can view it from some of those telescopes. And what we did was we went in there and traced out the silhouette of the roof from the telescope's point of view. So you can actually watch and see, oh, nope, that's not up yet. We've got to wait a little bit longer before it gets up above the roof line, and then we'll be able to see it. And you can do that here with Stellarium by uploading your own landscape panorama. That's actually quite helpful if you've got a small area that you're working with. Next up, the star lore. Someone had asked about changing the constellation art. Star lore is full of, I think there's about 42, 43 different cultures listed. Even the Western constellations, there's like 4 different interpretations of the Western constellations. I don't remember, I don't know if any of you remember H.A. Rey, the author of Curious George, also did a book on constellations. And his constellations are loaded up in here. And not so much artwork, but it's the lines. And H.A. Rey didn't like how people made the lines for the constellations. He took the constellations of the sky and drew them in a way that made more sense to him. And I remember even as a young boy, I saw his version of the Great Bear. And for him, the end of the handle of the dipper is not the bear's tail, it's the bear's nose. And he thought that looked a lot more like a bear should. So there are all sorts of options there. A couple others I know we have people of various cultures here in the United States that may have different constellation traditions associated with their culture, or maybe even international cultures are represented in there. China's got an extensive library. I find the constellations of the Pacific Islanders amazing because they are the wayfinders. They use them for navigating over the open ocean. Some of the American Indian tribes of North America have got their constellations loaded. And by the way, most of these are from just private citizens who have loaded up images that they have drawn and stitched them into the celestial map. So it's one of the benefits of having open source software. If you want to be ambitious and come up with your own constellations, maybe you can do your own H.A. Rey and redraw the constellations of the sky. You've got that opportunity to do that. And that's the Star Lore tab. And finally, the surveys. There is an extensive library of stellar surveys, double stars, variable stars, everything else, different temperatures of stars, ruby stars, carbon stars, T-Tauri protostars, stuff like that. You will find an extensive list of surveys. And if you're now confused and you're not sure what I'm talking about, don't worry, you do not have to go out on that tab. But there's an extensive library, and many of the catalogs are around a certain theme, like variable stars or double stars. So that's a very convenient list if you're looking for some observing challenges. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of these. Let me head off to our Stellarium environment. And this, we can go down a rabbit hole really quick. And I don't want to do that. I just want to give you a cursory view of what some of these are. So I talked about adding light pollution. You can adjust the number of meteors you see over a certain time, and then what the stars will look like. How much they twinkle, their absolute scale, their relative scale, you can adjust that so the stars have more of a contrast in their magnitude. And then there are different projections you can choose, just like we have different projections of an Earth map, where you see the continents out of scale through Mercator, or more orthographic, where they're more even. You can do the same thing with the sky. Solar system objects, how they appear, the magnitude of what appears, what's labeled, what's not. If you want to really go crazy with the faint asteroids, the minor planets, you can add those too. The deep sky objects, an incredible list of catalogs. And if you don't know what these are, don't worry about it. Most of the stuff that we see in the sky are either in the NGC catalog or the Messier catalog, and that will give you plenty of things to find. But if you are interested in like the ARP catalog, which has got oddly shaped galaxies, or the Able catalog, those are all available. And when you click those buttons, those objects will appear in their position in the sky. You can filter out if you're just looking for a certain type of object. You can deselect those so the other stuff disappears, and then you could change the magnitudes and how many labels are out there. They can get pretty dense and pretty filled up. So if you are really zoomed in, let's say you're using this for a telescope, maybe you want that level of a detail. But for backyard observing, it just gets way too busy. Here are the different markings we talked about: the ecliptic, the meridian, the equator. All of these lines can be selected or deselected, and you can also change the color of these. So if you want something like the horizon to stand out more from the meridian, if you want to see the galactic grid of the Milky Way, that's available. And if you click there, it shows up on your map, and you can see where the North Pole of the Milky Way is pointed. So lots of options available there. Here's our landscapes, including a wintry countryside. There's my favorite ocean horizon. Lots of trees, as if you are stuck down at the bottom of the forest, the canopy above you. And of course, why wouldn't you want to go out to Jupiter or the moon or just a regular straight do nothing horizon? There's our star lore with the various cultures, different constellations, interpretations of the night sky. There is a little bit of a write-up to give you some information. Now remember, these are just regular citizens putting this stuff in here. I saw there's a pretty extensive community for Stellarium, and someone was mentioning that, oh, I don't like the way this works. Can we put together a bug fix? And well, no, this is open source, buddy. I don't think you know what open source means. So he's sitting there waiting for someone to fix his problems, and it's just not going to happen. So a variety of different constellations you see, drawings from the different cultures, a description in the box includes some background, and then additional resources like the asterisms of HA Ray. There they are right there. And finally, that long list of surveys. I'm not going to let that load up. That is way too big and much more than we need to do. And now it's loading up. I should not have pushed that button. There's the wheel of waiting. Let's hop back to the show. All right, so the next selection down is the search window. You can search by an object. If you click in the search window, you can type Orion, for example, and underneath there, it will show you some options that meet with your description. If you just click on the search magnifier, then it will go ahead and find Orion. It will show you the Orion constellation. But as I'm typing Orion here, it says, okay, well, you're probably looking for Orion, but hey, maybe you're looking for the Orion's Head Nebula. Oh, yes, I am. It's available, so I'll type that in here, and that will show up. Then all I have to do is click there. You can see how it's bolded. That means it's available, and it will go ahead and find it for me. And there it is right there, the Orion's Head Nebula. You can also put in a position, a coordinate, right ascension and declination, and that will take you to that point in the sky. There are also lists if you're looking for things like asterisms, something from the Barnard catalog, asteroids, bright double stars. You can see how much room that scroll bar has. So if there's something you're particularly interested in, asterisms are a popular one because asterisms are shapes that people see in the sky. Typically, those are easy to see with the eyes. Maybe binoculars would be helpful, but they're usually pretty easy to see. And so those asterisms are all listed here, including the coat hanger Suresh mentioned. And then finally, an online database from the University of Strasbourg in France, if you want to search through just an extensive list of things that are available online. It's right there. You don't even have to exit the Stellarium environment. You can stay right there. The next window down looks like a wrench with a star on it. That's the configuration window. And that will change things up, what kind of settings you will have. There are some options there. Let's go through those. So the main customizes your default sky settings. So when Stellarium pops up, what will it look like by default? The information you see includes when you click on the object you saw up on the left, it lists all sorts of details about the object you've selected. Maybe that's too much. You can actually customize that. Bring it way down, just have a name and a magnitude and a location, or maybe you like to see all of that. And it's a comprehensive look at everything about what you've just clicked on. The extras button includes you can add on-screen buttons like the flip button that you saw I added, or the meteor shower button. Those are buttons that you can add to your Stellarium environment to make it quicker for you to navigate between settings. And then the time tab here, you can modify your time format if you're used to the European way that they list dates. If you have different times you'd like to have listed, if you want it to display UTC, GMT, Zulu time, there are a variety of different formats you can select. The Tools tab allows you to modify the display options. Many of these tools are not selected by default to keep things trim, but you can add those additional tools to provide more functionality. And then the scripts. Now the scripts get pretty advanced, but I do want to give you a little insight into it. People have written automated programs that when you operate them in Stellarium, most often you select the button to load those at startup. When you activate them and you start up, it'll automatically run through those tasks. Say you wanted to display a certain family of asteroids that you've been tracking, or some minor planets, or what have you. There are scripts that you can write and enter in there that you can take advantage of, but you don't have to write them. There are also options available that you can search scripts that people have already loaded and then decide whether or not you want your Stellarium environment to run those scripts. So very helpful stuff. Things you can add, and that's especially helpful when we have changes to, say, like the comet C2023 A3. When that came into the sky, you can go through and add that comet to Stellarium. And so rather than trying to guess where the comet's at, it will show a little icon where the comet is, and then you can get right to it. So those are the sorts of things that you can customize later using the controls in Stellarium to provide you additional functionality. Plugins are the very same thing. There are scripts, there are a library of scripts and different operators that you can add to the Stellarium environment to just enhance the experience and provide additional functionality. And again, you can tell it when you want it to start up, when you want it to add, or what you want to add to it or subtract from it, and when you want that operation to commence. Down one more, and this is really getting off into the weeds. This is this is some heavy math stuff. You don't have to head off here, but if you do, you'll find some excellent tools to track things around in the sky. So you click on the astronomical calculations, and these tabs show different functions that maybe fits exactly what you've been looking for. First off, the positions, you can find the coordinates of any object. You enter the object in through a variety of name searches, or if you have a catalog number or what have you, you just start typing it in and it'll probably find it for you, and it will tell you exactly where it is in the sky. An ephemeris is a list of positions over time. So if you want to see for the comet example, for example, it will display a table for you, the position of the comet at the same time every day as the comet moves through the sky. You can do that with planets, you can do that with asteroids, and you can tell it what you want to find and what kind of interval you want to ask it to produce for you. Phenomenon include conjunctions, oppositions, occultations, and eclipses. If you want to find out when the moon is going to occult a bright star, you can just look inside there and give it a time, let's say through 2025, and it will automatically look at the list of ephemerae and load them together and find, oh, there's going to be a nice occultation on this date. The moon's going to pass in front of Mars, or maybe Saturn and Venus will be very close in the sky. Those are the sorts of phenomenon that you can ask it to find for you. The graphs can be really extensive or really simple. And they could be, say, for example, how far apart planets are from each other, how far apart Mercury and Saturn are over time. And it'll graph it out for you, and you can show the maximum and minimum. The distance to the moon, for example, will oscillate throughout the year, and you could have it generate a graph for you that will show that oscillation. WUT is what's up tonight. And if you're really not sure what you should be looking for or what's out there, you can just go out to that tab and it will show you a list of things that are happening. If you want to customize it to just show you bright stars or just the planets or just meteor showers, you've got those options available. But that's a really nice, hey, I want to go outside and look what's going on tonight. And finally, the planetary calculator. This allows you to calculate positions of planets, separations of planets, where they are in their orbits, and it can graphically display those for you. So it takes care of all the math. So it's kind of like finding a bunch of mathematical treats nestled down inside the software. And then here's the help function. That first tab is the about the shortcuts. It's about the shortcuts that we have. And if you scroll down, you get to further reading. You can see where the Stellarium wiki is online, the landscapes you could choose from that people have loaded, the different scripts, Google groups, community groups where you could share information. The About button tells you the version you have, and the log will tell you when it boots up. It will write down all the specifics, a boot log. And so if you have some problems, you can scroll down through here and find out if there's any errors reported in the operation. All right. So that's the basics of Stellarium. It's going to give you enough to go out into the night sky, wander about, and use Stellarium to help you find the way. If there's something you've always wanted to see, Stellarium's a great way to get you there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that survey button and put us right back to tonight at 8 o'clock. And if you have any questions, a function you want to see, how do I do this or that? Now's your chance to ask.
Great, Ron. Wow, you covered a lot of ground. Does anybody have any questions for Ron? Anything that want some clarification on, or how best I might use the software? Does anybody have any questions or comments? You can speak up now. You don't have to put it in the chat. All right. Well, Ron, I think, oh, Doug Nelson says, excellent presentation. I agree with that.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
with that, I think that there are no more questions. So Ron, really appreciate you doing this. This is great. And
It's my
for
pleasure.
everyone, we will take this recording and put it on the MAS YouTube page probably by the end of the week. It takes a few days to edit that and put that on there. So if you want to watch this again, maybe once you've downloaded the software, you can do that. And I'll mention that our next MAS Beginner Special Interest Group presentation is scheduled for Saturday, December 7th at 1 p.m. Claire Weaverling will be presenting on globular clusters. So I look forward to seeing everybody again then. In the meantime, have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, everybody.